Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. Coming up, as a group of high-profile Frenchmen signed a petition demanding longer paid paternity leave, we take a look at where France stands globally when it comes to supporting dads wanting a more proactive role in raising their children. We also meet the woman who interviewed more than 100 convicted sex offenders in India to find out what actually motivated them. And Australia's female farmers are finally recognised for their contribution to the country's agricultural sector. But we begin here in France, where a group of high-profile Frenchmen have signed a petition demanding the right to longer paternity leave so that they can better support their partners. It calls for the 11 days leave that is awarded to new dads to be extended to 6 weeks and also made obligatory. Alexander Orcott takes a look at how France indeed compares to other nations when it comes to supporting working fathers wanting more time with their children.
The first moments with a newborn baby are special, and a group of French fathers is calling for more time to enjoy them. Among them are several high-profile figures who've signed a petition calling for paternity leave to be extended from just 11 days on full pay currently to 6 weeks. One of the signatories is the playwright Jean-Michel Ribes. He says the role fathers play today is different from that of the past, and the law should reflect that.
I think we could end up feeling regret about missing out on something that you can't get back. Seeing a small being on its path to discovery should be enjoyed equally by mother and father.
French mothers have between 8 and 16 weeks of maternity leave in France, and many people support an increase for fathers.
It would give the mother a bit of time for herself and give her some mental relief by being able to count on her partner.
It's difficult to compare paternity leave by country due to the particularities of individual systems, but 6 weeks in France would bring it just above Portugal, where fathers have 5 weeks, but well below Finland and Sweden, which have 9 and 14.3 weeks respectively. While elsewhere, the UK and Australia each offer 2 working weeks at reduced pay, and the United States guarantees nothing at all for either paternity or maternity leave. Many small business owners in France say a big increase in paternity leave would be unsustainable.
6 weeks of leave is going to risk this organisation. When you have just 1 or 2 employees, a contract and a client who needs work done, and an employee who would leave for such a long time who cannot be replaced.
Last April, the European Commission tried to pass a law guaranteeing 2 weeks of paternity leave across the bloc, but negotiations on the deal have stalled.
Now, here's an event you wouldn't normally associate with bold feminist acts. Entrants in Peru's Miss Universe pageant broke with tradition and recited statistics detailing violence against women rather than giving their own body measurements. The organisers also joined in showing news material of prominent cases of gender-based violence.
Mis medidas son 2.202 casos por feminicidio reportados en los últimos 9 años en mi país.
Y mis medidas son: más del 70% de las mujeres de nuestro país es víctima de acoso callejero.
To India now, where studies show that more than 90% of rape cases go unreported, meaning, for instance, that the figure of 35,000 rapes in 2015 is actually much, much worse. Madhumita Pandey is an Indian student who decided to focus her PhD on trying to understand what prompts men to sexually assault women. She interviewed more than 100 convicted rapists in a New Delhi jail, and she joins me now from Manchester in the UK. Madhumita, thank you so much for being with us. I understand that you decided to do this research after that highly publicised and horrific gang rape of a young Indian woman in 2012 that captured world headlines, confirming in many people's mind that this is a country not safe for women.
Right. I think this is a question that I get asked quite often. But for me, I like to understand what is meant by safe. You know, are we talking about women being safe from sexual violence, sexual abuse, domestic violence, women being safe from every day-to-day harassment that they go through? I think for me, being someone who was born and brought up in New Delhi, after this horrific gang rape case that took place in December 2012, so almost 5 years later, as I speak about it, even today, it gives me the chills because it was something that made me look at the city that I grew up in a very different light, and I realized how my own experiences cannot even compare to the experiences of women from other parts of the country.
So what was it like meeting these offenders? Were you frightened at all?
I wouldn't say frightened. I think I was quite intrigued because, doing research with in any human environment with human participants, it comes with a lot of subjectivities and emotions. And when we go into the prison, we often forget that this place is also housing human beings, individuals who were once a part of our very own society. So at first, it can be a bit uncomfortable because you don't know how they are going to react to my presence and to my questions. But I think after a few initial interviews and interactions, you do get the hang of how to communicate with them. And I think some of the interviews, they can be a bit harrowing because these men, they are living in this confined space. So they talk to you about their frustrations and emotions and their feelings. So it's quite a cathartic process for them as well.
So what did you discover?
I think there are some general demographic factors that can be associated with any crime in general, such as poverty, lack of education, migration, etc. But speaking very specifically about these convicted rapists, I think the issue with these men was that they didn't really fully understand that what they had done constituted as rape. So there was a lack of understanding. There was a disconnect between the story that they were telling me and how they were describing it, how they viewed themselves, and how they wanted me to perceive them. So while when they spoke about their actions, the actions constituted as rape, but they themselves did not want to be identified as rapists. So I think it was a problem with the label. Their narratives also highlighted a lot of rape myths and a lot of victim blaming, which was something that I was anticipating in general. And at the same time, most of them also said that they were falsely accused. So they were very reluctant to admit that they had committed a crime, a rape against women.
Madhumita, given that what you've been talking about probably in most cases comes back to cultural mindsets, is it at all possible that that could change, given that India is a very traditional conservative society when it comes to the role of women?
Yes, it's a lot to do with the cultural mindsets. One of the main findings from the work that I've done, because in the narratives when these men spoke about their upbringing, and when I was trying to understand their gender socialization process, it was all about a very traditional mindset that they had developed, seeing their parents at home in traditional, gender roles, mother being at home, father working, father being more aggressive, mother being more docile and more respectful, and almost following all the commands of the father. So, and at the same time, I think the issue is also, like you said, about sexuality. While sexuality is deeply sort of entrenched in our consumer culture, so for instance, Bollywood, at the same time, access to internet, last year, India was one of the top 3 countries that was consuming pornography. So while we have access to all of this, we still do not openly discuss about these issues, and that's the problem. There is still a stigma surrounding this. One of the ways there can be a change in attitudes is by introducing sex education, by also introducing gender equitable curriculums in schools so that children from a very young age understand how women now in the modern times are shedding away these traditional gender roles and are becoming more independent.
Madhumita Pandey, it's been wonderful speaking to you. Thank you so much. And finally, the Australian bush is known to be a brutal environment and even tougher for farmers. These days, more than half of the country's farmers are female. This despite the Australian census not recognising women as farmers until 1994. In fact, they had to choose helpmate or farmer's wife as their occupation. Emerald Maxwell takes a look at their contribution to the country's agricultural sector.
The Australian outback is an unforgiving place at the best of times, especially for farmers. Many of them are women, but until now, they were rarely officially recognised.
Mum had amazing energy and ability to make things happen, juggling 4 children, a farm, a factory, retail shops, bookwork, the whole bit. Mum never referred to herself as a farmer, but I think it was probably a combination of imposter syndrome and lack of confidence.
But Sally does call herself a farmer and is forging her own career, establishing a new milk label. Older women remember a time when it was harder.
I studied agriculture, and at that stage there were various institutions I couldn't attend because they didn't have facilities for women. I couldn't see my daughter or the young women here taking that quietly.
Today, women account for 49% of farmers, and the largest ever study of women in agriculture is encouraging them to tell their stories. They make up part of the exhibition Women of the Land at Melbourne Museum.
Senior curator Lisa Dale-Hallett started here in the agricultural collection, and she started to question, where are the women? There was a lot of agricultural machinery, but where were the stories of what women were doing on farms?
Sally hopes that putting stories like hers on record will inspire other women in farming to find their voice.
And that's it for now, and you can connect with us via our Facebook page, that's France24.51%, or do send us a tweet at _51%. Thanks for your feedback so far, and yes, please keep those comments and suggestions rolling in. So until our next show, bye for now.